What is going on, Empire Builders? We have John Corcoran in the building today. John, how's it going, man?
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Brian.
No, I am super excited to have you because not only has John been a huge impact on my business and just helping me flesh out what I should be doing and figure things out, he has, an extremely, amazing background and portfolio. He was a writer for the White House for a time during the Clinton administration, and then even did some speech writing for the California governor. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I was a speechwriter for governor of California. Yeah.
That is awesome. And so, John is not only extremely well connected and knows how to build relationships with the right people, he is also an incredible entrepreneur and business owner. So I have John here today to talk with us all about how we can earn more money without actually having to go get more customers. And this is all around about creating a value ladder, essentially walking people, through different levels that you have of your products and offerings, allowing them to get into your world. So I'm not the expert here, John is, but I'm super excited to have him. Before we dive into that, John, maybe in your own words, you can kind of tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So you're right. I started my career in politics, working in the Clinton White House. I was also an early employee at DreamWorks, and went to law school and I became a lawyer, started my own boutique practice, and I discovered that, the thing that sucks about trading hours for dollars as a lawyer is you're constantly starting over. You're constantly having to get more clients. If you go on vacation, you're not getting paid. If you get sick, you're not getting paid, all those problems. And so I tried to find a way out of it. It took a long time, but eventually I got my way out of it. And I found a way that was more scalable, gave you greater control over your time and money. And so that's what I do now. A lot of what we do is helping other professionals to do the same.
Yeah, and I think that's where your message really resonated with me. It's where I do a lot of one-on-one work with my clients right now, and I've been looking for a way to scale past that in different capacities. So I've been really appreciative of all of your awesome advice. Why don't you describe to us, what a value ladder is and why you think it's important for a business to have one?
Sure. Yeah. So when people get into business, whether it's consulting or coaching or something like that, a lot of times, we just think, okay, it's very easy to get into. Like, I'm just going to trade my time. You pay me for my time and I'll help you. And it's kind of the easiest type of business to get into, but then it's also the hardest kind of business to get out of, because once you're in it, then you get addicted to it, and if you stop working, you're not getting paid. And sometimes there's a limit to what the market will bear, what people will pay you for your time. And even if you get paid a high amount, still, if you go on vacation or if you're not working, then you're not getting paid. And so there are real limits to those sorts of things. So what we advise people to do is to think through what it is you're really providing for your customers, for your clients, and how can you divide it up in a way that makes logical sense so that they move up your value ladder. The key question I often ask people is, if someone really likes working with you, how can they get more of you? And if the answer is just work with me longer, then you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because they probably want help with something more or something deeper that you could provide for them that would be smarter than just trading your hours for dollars. So if you think through what different offerings, what you really help people with, then there probably are different ways that you can slice up those solutions for people. Now, people have limiting beliefs around this. There was a guy on our webinar recently, one of our webinars recently. He'd been an engineer for 31 years. And he was in the chat and he was like, no way, you can do this. And he was just kind of stuck and thinking, like, this is what I've been doing for a long time, helping people with my engineering solutions. But what this is about the knowledge and expertise that you have in your head and sharing that with others in a way that doesn't require you to trade hours for dollars. Now, we're not inventing anything here. I mean, if an author writes a book, it's taking the knowledge and expertise in their head and it's putting that knowledge and expertise into a book, and then people consume it on their own time. It doesn't take that author's time once they put it into that book. So that's all we're talking about here, is smarter ways to be compensated for the knowledge and expertise in your head.
Yeah, and you're talking, almost where people start at the top of the value ladder, where they're charging the most for their time, maybe, or they're doing the one-on-one work.
Yeah.
And now you're suggesting they, possibly maybe charge less for that, takes less of their time, maybe productize it, create a course.
Yeah. So the problem that a lot of people have, we call it the big bag of money problem, is they create a solution that they want to charge, and that's great, but it's hard to get people to say yes to that. Like we give like the Starbucks analogy. When you go into a Starbucks, there's sometimes all the Starbucks have like a $300 espresso machine on the wall. Now, if you've never been in a Starbucks ever before in your life, which of course everyone has, but had never been in a Starbucks, you're not going to walk in and immediately be like, I'm going to get that $300 espresso machine off the wall, because you're like, I don't know this business. I don't know if this is going to work. So you work your way up the ladder. You buy coffee, then you buy a sandwich, then you come back the next time, you buy a bag of beans. Eventually you build up trust and you're like, you know what? I'm willing now. I built up that trust. I'm willing to buy that thing. Now, when professional services, we're constantly asking people to spend a boatload of money on our offering, and they haven't bought from us before oftentimes. And so that's why it's so hard to sell them on our product or service. So what we're talking about is create different entry points. We call them sometimes a minimum viable offering, something that doesn't take your time or takes a minimal amount of your time, that allows them to engage with you, that allows them to experience you, build up that trust with you, and diversifies your revenue at the same time, and then allows them to move up the ladder, and they're more willing to say yes to your big bag of money because they've already bought from you before.
Right, right. I absolutely love that. So why don't you maybe give us some specific examples of, what lower stage or lower part of the ladder, middle part of the ladder, and higher part of the ladder, maybe what those offerings might be,
Yeah.
so people can get some ideas.
Yeah, because sometimes people are like, I have no idea what I could come up with,
Right.
So let's take like a photographer, right? A photographer, like a wedding photographer. Maybe a wedding photographer, they want to sell like a $5,000 or $10,000 package, photography package.
Right.
Now that's a lot to sell, right? A nervous bride is like, I don't know if this person's going to produce great pictures. Are they going to show up drunk on my wedding day? Are they even going to show up at all, right? So like, I'm not sure if I should hire them. So what if that photographer has something much less expensive? This is the MVO, the minimum viable offering I was talking about, much less expensive, discreet, that gets them a positive outcome, a positive result, gets you the experience of working with you. And then they can say, okay, now I trust that person better. So what about a headshot? Like a $300 headshot, not something that's free, because free is a completely different animal, but requires them to pay some money. They pay for value. They get overwhelming value in return, and then they build up that trust, and then they say, oh, okay, I know this person's good. They showed up on time. They produced a good portrait. I've got this headshot now, and now I trust them better, and now I'm more comfortable spending $5,000 or $10,000 on this person. Now, photographers do this oftentimes with like engagement photos. Like an engagement photo might be much less expensive. Let's take a web designer. Web designer might be another one. Maybe they want to sell a $10,000, $15,000 web design, complete overhaul and a branding package and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's hard to sell because it's expensive. So what if you start with something much more discreet and smaller? Maybe it's a logo. Maybe it's a one page of the website. Maybe it's just redesigning the about page of a website or a landing page or something like that. Something smaller. They pay something, they get a good value, they get a positive result, and then they're more trusting and they're willing to then take it further.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think is the best way to present these different levels of offers to people? Just kind of like a buffet where it's like, hey, this is everything I have. Do you introduce them to the lower ticket offer first? Because I know people have mixed feelings about tripwires, whether or not they work. And how do you kind of feel about that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how complex and sophisticated you want to get about this stuff. What I usually say for people is if they don't have these things, then just at least get started with creating something, because that's overwhelming enough as it is. Worrying about whether they're all in different, in order and what gets presented first, that can get very overwhelming very quickly. And so you don't want to worry too much about it. But you do want to generally have a funnel, essentially, that will take people through that. You don't want to be presenting them with the $30,000 offer when they haven't even bought the $10 offer, So that's much more on the front end. I mean, I remember their business may have changed a little bit, but so Digital Marketer, which puts on the Traffic Conversions Summit every year. It's a great conference. I've been to it a number of years. And Roland Frazier, who was kind of to one of our Rise 25 events, I asked him, and they have like a $1 offer, and they also have like multi-$100,000 offers.
Right.
And, I said, can people skip straight to the multi-$100,000 offer if they're like a multi-millionaire? Or do they have to go through the $1 offer? Because a lot of times people will say, my clients are higher caliber, and so I wouldn't want people to have to go through this much less expensive offering. And basically what he said was the vast majority of the time, everyone goes through the entire funnel. That is, they start at the $1 offer. Even the billionaires start at the $1 offer, and they work their way up. Now, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but for the most part, people are working their way through that. Take Tony Robbins as another example. Tony Robbins has everything from, like multiple $100,000 offers, his Platinum Partners program. You can go to Fiji, it's great to do these things.
Right.
Most people, when they start engaging with Tony Robbins and his business, they maybe pick up his book. They maybe pick up a DVD or an audio CD. Maybe they watch some videos on YouTube. Yep. So they start at the much lower end when they're getting that initial exposure to his business, and then they work their way up.
Yeah. And I think ClickFunnels is another good example of this. He's got free books, plus shipping, those kinds of things that lead you into their funnels. They have events. It was hilarious. I saw like this meme where it was like the guy who's like tripping out in the nightclub, and he like says he's at the ClickFunnels event when you realize you're in a funnel being sold more funnels. It was so funny because it's true.
Yeah.
But they do such a great job of building up, the ways or different ways for people to get into their world.
Right,
so
right.
What would you say to people if they don't have anything yet? Where should they start? Should they start on the high end or the low end? Now, I learned this the hard way, but I'm curious, in your own words, what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, people make mistakes at both ends of the spectrum. A lot of times people will try and create something that's too inexpensive and it's hard to monetize that. What I recommend is just, it's a big shift to go from one-on-one done-for-you solution to getting 2 or 3 or 4 people together. So I like to just boil it down to something that's very simple, like, imagine, if you will, if you were to take, and it could be your past clients, existing clients, people you've already served, they already trust you, they already know you, they already like you, they probably want something more from you, even if you don't realize it. Get them on the phone and talk to them. That's the first step. Getting on the phone and talking to them, figuring out what else you could provide, what they're challenged by right now, what you could, how you could help them. And then create some kind of offering where you're going to teach them your viewpoint on the world, your curriculum, your framework. Everyone has a different perspective on the world. You have a different perspective on the world than I do. The way I would teach some material would be different from the way that you would and everyone else in this world. So recognize that you have a unique vision, and then just imagine for yourself, let's say those 4 people who show up at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, and they're going to be there for an hour. What are you going to teach them during that first hour? Okay. And then they're going to come back the next week. And what are you going to teach them that next week? And you're going to do that 4 weeks in a row. That's 4 hours. What are you going to teach them each week? What are they going to walk away with? And at the end of the 4 weeks, how are they going to be different? How are you going to have taught them something or given them some information or some training that has helped them scratch an itch, help them with the challenge that they've experienced? That's it. Just boil it down to that simple dynamic, and I think you'll be okay. And it'll help you figure out just the basics of getting started with this stuff.
And that was an example of walking backwards from doing one-to-one to more of a group setting, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Great. So this is kind of a selfish question, but I know all of us struggle with this and are interested in this. How do you go about pre-selling this? You've got maybe an audience already. Do you have a new offer? You're afraid to launch it or create it because you want to pre-sell it first. What do you do?
So it depends on how much time you want to spend building up to it. But, surveys are a great tool. Getting on the phone are a great tool. I think a lot of times the biggest disconnect that people have and the mistakes that people have is when they haven't really captured what the market wants from them. So they haven't spent enough time talking in the market, figuring out where the holes exist in the market and how they can help with those things. So I think spending a lot of time doing that is absolutely helpful. It could be something that is very labor intensive, like you're getting on the phone, talking to people. It could be done over coffee. I mean, I'm constantly asking people questions about where their challenges are, because that's where the opportunities are. And then, just once you've gotten really clear on what the challenges are, then you can start creating from there, you can create some kind of solution. And you want to make sure that it's in a medium that the people want. A lot of times people put it in a medium that they want, not that the market wants. So what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. I talked to a woman once who was really struggling. She had created a 2-day weekend boot camp for Christian couples who are about to get married, who wanted advice on marriage. She wasn't married herself. And and I was like, how do you know that these couples want a 2-day weekend boot camp? Which, by the way, she wasn't doing a very good job of selling. And she was like, I wanted to create that. That was her answer. I wanted to create that. Well, the truth is, maybe these couples don't want to engage in that way. Maybe they're busy professionals and they'd be willing to do an evening group call via webinar, but they're not willing to give up an entire weekend because they'd rather do that, spend time with their friends. So be sure the medium that you're going to create is a way that people want to engage with you. And so I think just getting really clear on what challenge you're helping people with and getting really clear on providing the right medium for people. Not like you fall in love with a particular software and you're like, oh, I love this software, so I'm going to put it in this software. Well, maybe they don't want it even in software. We had a client who she was envisioning she was going to create a video group like via Zoom where everyone would be on video. Well, most of her followers, her clients, were very introverted and shy, and they wanted a teleconference. They didn't want to be on video. Yeah. They wanted to be able to talk over the phone. So, but that only came out when she had talked to them over the phone and she'd realized that that's the medium that they actually wanted it in.
That's such good advice, because I feel like so often we talk about the type of content or the information in the content and not the medium that it's delivered in, because you're right, for different types of audiences and people, they're going to want something different.
Yeah, exactly. Or we're not really tapping into the true solution that we're providing. A lot of times, especially in the online space, you'll see people who are like, I'm selling this course and it includes 15 videos. Well, what are the videos? Why do I care about the videos? What does it do? How does that help me? So a lot of times I think people we get a little too caught up on those less relevant pieces of it and not really articulating in a persuasive way the solution or the solution, I guess is the exact word, solution that we're providing that helps the person with the challenge that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe you could just, again, for us to get an understanding of what this looks like in the real world, what's your value ladder look like? And you don't have to give us, exact prices, but just kind of how do you walk people through a value ladder in your business?
So I made mistakes in my business of not creating value ladders. Like my initial business, so I was a practicing attorney. And well, let me start there actually, because when I was a practicing attorney, I had a value ladder in a sense. So in 2008, 2009, when the real estate market went like this and crashed, I was working at a law firm that did a lot of real estate work. And we had all these real estate clients that were coming to us with their houses underwater and facing short sales and foreclosures. And they were like, we need help. But they didn't have a lot of money to spend. So I started creating these short sale consultations that were 60 minutes long. They would sit down with me, a lawyer, and I would give them advice. And I'd give them kind of a roadmap. Some of those people then decided to engage with us, move up the value ladder, spend more money on us, and get a better solution. Other people went on their merry way, and that was fine.
Right.
And looking back in retrospect, I realized that that was essentially a MVO, a minimum viable offering, because it was a discrete, less expensive offering that got them in the door, got them spending some money with us, built some trust with us, and some of them would then escalate up the ladder. Now, when I started my online business through Smart Business Revolution, I created a bunch of online courses. I didn't really have a distinct ladder where it was clear where people would buy at a lower level, a less expensive offering, and then work their way up into higher and more expensive offerings. I still have a number of different online courses, but they didn't really connect to one another because I hadn't really thought it out that way.
Right.
With Rise 25, we have a couple of different lines to the business, but as far as serving professional services, we've got a couple of different offerings, some of which are as inexpensive as $37 and give them one discrete result, like helping them. We have something called Cash Surge System, which is helping them to get immediate results in communicating with their hottest leads and prospects, and a process for doing that in order to get clients in the door in a very short term. And then we have something called our Revenue Booster program, which goes a little bit further, has some foundational pieces and introduces them to the foundations of how to create something that's more scalable. And then we have our Revenue Jumpstart program, which we've sold for anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. And that is a longer term 8-week program, which involves some handholding from us and calls and things like that. And also self-paced courses that really gives them the entire playbook on how to create their first scalable one-to-many offering. And then we have live events, which are more expensive than that. Come and work with us in long-term, in a shorter term, but in a more concentrated format over a couple of days. And then we even have an annual program as well for people who want to work with us over the course of a year. So that makes more sense the way that one has been laid out. And then we're still laying out other product ladders as well, where we take a look at. So, for example, one of the other markets that we serve is e-commerce entrepreneurs who sell physical products online. And we've done live events for e-commerce entrepreneurs, and that's one piece of the ladder. So it helps to take a look at it and think, okay, what do I need in order to get people to pay $2,000 to come to a live event? Well, that is a lot. Even if someone's making $5 million in their business, it's a substantial chunk of change. So what can you create that will be like that cup of coffee that people get at Starbucks? Allows them to build some trust and then be like, okay, then, I've gotten a good result from this. I know that $2,000 will be well spent. I'm willing to invest that money now.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone watching too, if you get a chance, John and Jeremy, his business partners, events for Rise 25 are awesome and well worth the investment.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man. No, seriously, you guys have been so helpful to me and just getting clear on what I need to do. So a lot of what you've been teaching here has what, of course, you've been teaching me. So I'm really, really grateful you could come in and share that today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cool, man. So why don't you tell us where we can go if we want to learn a little bit more about you, or if you've got a lead magnet or webinar you want to point us to, whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah. Rise 25 is probably the most, makes the most sense. Rise25.com. We've got our dream product ladder, which you can download, which will teach you a little bit about how to create your own product ladder as well. So you can check it out. And we do webinars from time to time. So hop on my email list and we do webinars where we talk about these things and train you how to put these things together. So you can do that.
Well, I'll make sure to link that up below the video in the show notes. But again, thank you so much, John, for coming and hanging out with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Talk soon.